Good evening and welcome. You're watching Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of ANN7 Prime. Our top story, EFF leader Julius Malema wants whites to oppose white monopoly capital. Malema was speaking at the Property Owners Association convention in Cape Town. He says white people are beneficiaries of colonialism and the apartheid regime. He wants white property owners to help the landless in the country, the majority of whom are black and poor. Malema further called on shopping centre developers to assist small township traders by giving them rent-free space. Meanwhile, critics question Malema's motive for picking up on the white monopoly capital narrative. The phrase has come to light again after the public protector advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane found that Absa Bank should pay back an apartheid-era loan. Julius Malema says, and I quote, "White monopoly capital does exist. There was a deliberate creation of it. Rupert is one of the people who are monopolizing. And white supremacy is so arrogant when we speak of white monopoly capital. Even whites who do not have land come to defend it when they must actually join us. If there's a disruption we need today, it is neoliberal short-sightedness," end quote. And other prominent figures have increasingly been using the white monopoly capital narrative.
Over the past 2 decades, the financial sector in South Africa has grown enormously. And the major banks and their corporate elites have made billions of rands, but this growth has not been for the benefit of the majority of South Africans.
The level of corruption that we have seen coming from white monopoly capital in this country, we cannot, as a federation, allow our members to be used in a political project. This has got nothing to do with saving South Africa. South Africa, we need to save it from exploitation.
White monopoly capital is concerned that there's now a change of power dynamics within the Treasury. And they are fearing that this change of power dynamics within the Treasury can actually undermine their continued control and management of the South African economy.
Meanwhile, embattled Western Cape Premier Helen Zille has slammed those using the term white monopoly capital.
I think we're living in a fool's paradise if we don't see how profoundly the debate has been racialized and how increasingly minorities are being used as scapegoats in South Africa for the ANC's failure to make this country work with all the resources they had at their disposal. So suddenly it becomes the whites' fault. Suddenly it becomes white monopoly capital's fault. And ironically, that narrative was framed in Britain by Bell Pottinger and has been picked up by everybody, including fake Twitter. And then they try to disguise it in pseudo-academic language like decolonization. Believe me, there is something very sinister going on below that surface.
You're always welcome to join in on the conversation. 011-542-2186. The white monopoly capital narrative. This time around, Julius Malema speaking at White Owners Property Conference, saying that even white people without land are arrogant enough to defend it. What do you make out of this? Give us a call or join us on social media. In studio, we're joined by Udo Frozer, independent political analyst and columnist. Sfiso Mahlangu is resident political analyst, or as he likes to call himself, the people's political analyst. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks so much for your time. I think we've put to rest now the terminology of white monopoly capital, regardless of which thesaurus that you're using. We now appreciate that it exists, but from time to time it is of course used for grandstanding or posturing, and it really deflates or takes away from the inequality that this country faces.
Well, good evening to you, and good evening to our viewers. I think the reality of the existence of white monopoly capital is something the media and political parties have been trying to derail from. When I wrote my postgraduate research survey, I looked deeply into the Marxist communist study relating it to South African politics. And you won't believe, Cindy, how many times the term white monopoly capital came up, particularly in the writings of the SACP. So the term white monopoly capital has always existed. But I think in this new day of light, we've come to realize who is white monopoly capital and what they're accused of, because white monopoly capital is a monster. So white monopoly capital runs three things and runs it well. They run the media, which is the media sector, publishing sector. White monopoly capital then runs the political sector and sometimes often the judiciary. And then white monopoly capital runs the financial sector. That can also be parts of banking and the economic framework. So it's a very strong, concise and well set government, if I can call it that run a country, but they run it using economic realms. And Mr. Malema has joined many who call it white monopoly capital, particularly in a time when a former finance minister such as Mr. Trevor Manuel had denied the existence of white monopoly capital, and he's not alone. People such as Helen Zille have denied it. But when you look at that narrative, you realize that the people who are refuting or disputing white monopoly capital are the very people who are the beneficiaries of white monopoly capital, who are enjoying the grapes of it. And those of us who are not enjoying the grapes of it, who still struggle without land, without jobs in this country, know who owns the economy. 97% of it is still owned by white people, and that you can call white monopoly capital. But white monopoly capital is not simply the realm of ownership, because white people seem to have it all in this country. It's called white monopoly capital because they monopolize everything. Big business goes into the townships, shuts down smaller spaza shops so that they can run. They monopolize the game, pressing charges to the price of medicine, the price of food, the price of fuel in this country, and monopolize the game. And so it's a very well structured debate. It's a structured conglomerate, and I think South Africans only are awakening to the reality of white monopoly capital. And those who oppose it, the beneficiaries of it, want to blame Bell Pottinger and say, well, they coined the term because they are the beneficiaries of it. They still enjoy it to this day. But those that have nothing, they don't have land, they don't have houses, they don't control the economy, really know and understand who white monopoly capital is.
And very well articulated. I think you've gone to great lengths to try and unpack this white monopoly capital, and especially when we find ourselves in this hugely polarized and the new political landscape we find ourselves in, Mr. Froza. How does it impact on the debate, especially going forward in trying to redress issues of the past and create an equal society, when we still have this tug of war between whether white monopoly capital exists and whether it doesn't exist?
Well, I was part in the early 1990s, part of a team researching the economy of this country, the structure of this economy, and we came to the conclusion that it is an exclusive, by definition, an exclusive, oligopolistic, warehouse and rent-seeking economy. So there was no way that anybody else newcomers could penetrate this economy. If you were in competition, you would just shut down. You just had to pay such exorbitant funds for everything. You would not even get loans or anything like that at all. I'd like to actually add to this what my colleague here said. We are actually talking about an elite transition in South Africa. A macroeconomic, socialist-leaning trajectory was actually transformed through an elite transition from apartheid to a neoliberal standing. And this is what actually happened. We didn't have much say in what was negotiated for this country, whether the ANC or the people backing the ANC. There was not much room for movement.
And even fast forward to 23 years, because that's the flack that the ANC receives, in that had they implemented some of the policies, a lot more material difference would have been made in the lives of the majority black South Africans. And you're saying that essentially, the party could only endorse or rubber stamp, which was on the negotiating table.
It goes much further back. It goes back to the 1959, when people visited and made contact with the ANC in exile, until 1990. Until they were released back into South Africa. It was even so much so that President Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia was bolted out of power, and they brought in Chiluba, who was American friendly. So if something would have gone wrong during the negotiations in South Africa, they were supposed to possibly move back to Zambia. That was closed. That door was closed firmly. So the ANC was literally cornered, with all due respect to things that went wrong and that didn't go wrong. So there are many things that we don't know that happened behind the scenes. All
right, hold that thought. We have Andile Mqitama. He is the convener or president of Black First, Land First movement. Good evening to you. And Phillips, we see you in Nelspruit. We'll start with the caller. Good evening to you, Phillips, and thanks for joining us. What's your comment or question?
Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir, we're listening.
Yes, monopoly is actually a crime against humanity. It's one human being trying to live at the expense of the life of other people. So monopoly is actually a crime. But it doesn't have to be white or black. It does not have to be. Whether it is white or black, it is a crime. And that is what we should be fighting against. So if tomorrow comes and now black people take over completely the whole economy and they start oppressing the masses, are we going to say it is fine because now it is black monopoly capital? That is why I'm saying monopoly is just bad. It's a crime against humanity and everybody must fight against it.
All right, thank you so much. Felix, you at home are most welcome to give us a call on as well. The line, or rather the number, is flashing on the screen. Andile Mqitama, good evening to you, sir. Do you think that former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel will actually rebut what Julius Malema again came out saying, white monopoly capital is indeed in existence?
Yes, I mean, the white monopoly capital exists. That is a fact beyond any possible refutation. So the South African whole political, economic and social structure is what we call white supremacist. It was created since 1652 with the arrival of white people in this country who colonized us, took our land, made us slaves, and they have all the goods, the comfort, the wealth, and were excluded as the black majority. Now, in the economic sector, this same white supremacy manifests as monopoly white capital or white monopoly capital. That is what happens in the economy. But the totality of the South African reality is white dominated. That is why I'm speaking to you in English today, which is really a language of colonizers. So what we need to understand, I think the most important, powerful thing which today we need to look at, as we see there are some serious attempts from within the president, the Minister Zwane, who come up with a very important revolutionary mining charter, and we also see the revelations of white corruption, is the power of white monopoly capital to use the media, as one of your analysts have said. You see, once you control the economy, you also control how people think, because you control the narratives that are generated at the level of the media, the discourses that are even generated by the university system, the knowledge production. We today have a serious problem where the white-owned media is pushing a white agenda, and it's rubbishing, criminalizing, attacking anyone who goes against the interests of white monopoly capital. People like Julius Malema, who are with white monopoly capital, are being allowed to contradict themselves, to lie to the poor, to speak right, to do left. Julius Malema speaks blacks but acts white. He would come and say colonialism is bad, or he'll come and say white monopoly capital is bad, but immediately go into bed with white monopoly capital, as he did today. We know that he asked for money from white monopoly capital. After having said that South Africa still has a problem of white monopoly capital, we know Julius Malema has given the DA a political power in the metros, and then he says he's fighting colonialism, and then promise our people that he will stop the coalition with the DA if they don't take actions against Helen Zille, who praises colonialism. He did none of that. So he can do that because Julius Malema is an agent of white monopoly capital, and they control the narratives. They control what's happening in the media, and therefore selling our people these false dreams and never questioning the contradictions of people like Julius Malema, but demonizing anyone who stands for the truth. People like Saudi is demonized, Brian Molefe is demonized, Dudu Myeni is demonized, the president of the country is demonized, Minister Zwane is demonized, the public protector is demonized. Anyone who stands for radical change, which will benefit black people, is demonized by the white media.
Yes, please stay on the line. We have a caller, Bongani in Cape Town. Good evening to you, and what's your comment or question?
Hi, good day. You're speaking to Bongani from Cape Town, all right?
Welcome.
Okay, what I want to emphasize, all right, is that white people, they have this tendency, not all of them, of course, they have this tendency of saying that they have a power over any color of people. They even have a term for it called white power. So what they're doing here in South Africa, they are exercising that white power, given that by the ANC, because the ANC is the one that is letting them practice this power that they practiced during the time of apartheid. As long as the ANC is not willing to change their policies, as long as the ANC is not willing to address everything that was done by these people. I'm sorry to say these people, but by white people, some of them, all right? We're not going to go anywhere in this country, all right? Let's support people that are saying, okay, you know what? Let's come together in the table, white, black, whatever color it is. Guys, let's say the economy of the country. What's wrong with that? Why are people fighting that? Because it's sharing, and sharing is caring. If you really care about people of this country, you must share with them.
Yeah.
Share the wealth of this country, share everything. But white people don't want to share. As long as they give us jobs, we work for them at the end of the day. As long as they give us anything, we will
Bongani, you quite right. I mean, it's
enshrined.
enshrined. Thanks so much for your call. It's enshrined in the Constitution that no one should be denied land, and we should all share in the wealth of this the economy or the country. Anonymous in the Eastern Cape, good evening to you. Welcome.
Good evening. Pleasure to be on the program. I'm fine, thank you.
Good. What's your comment or question?
I just want to ask the gentleman in a pink shirt there that spoke so well early on. I quite agree with him with a white monopoly, what they do and how they stay in power. But how can you explain to the people out there that form in the farming community, buying groups in big organizations to keep the smaller people out? We're fighting a battle, especially in rural farming communities, but it looks like a losing battle, and I totally agree what he said early on. But we're scared, and we cannot fight them because of the money and the power they have behind them.
All right, Anonymous, just also send us the details on assignment@ann7.com, assignment@ann7.com, and I'm sure it's a story we can pick up as well. Thanks for that call. Sfiso, your take on what people can do to dismantle the stranglehold.
Well, first of all, I thank the caller for raising this question and concern. And I think the best way to deal with it is to form initiatives and become very vociferous about it and not to be silent. I think silence is a matter in this country that we've got to overlook because people died and blood was shed so that we may have a voice. And I think the first assessment to white monopoly capital is the realization that it does exist. I think as South Africans, when we stop denying and refusing the existence of white monopoly capital, we can grow and become a force to be reckoned with. And it's not just in the agricultural sector, not just in the media sector, not just in the banking sector, it's in all sectors of life. They exercise collusion and no one brings them to book because they're a brotherhood clan that really protects each other. And I think this is why South Africans must rally behind people like Minister Mosebenzi Zwane, because of the mining charter, and not be silent, because it seems like it's just the public protector that is saying the Constitution does not represent smaller groups on the ground. And the rest of us just say the public protector does not know what she's talking about. I think the way to arrest white monopoly capital in the first place is a refusal to be quiet. And we may collectively just say, I have a voice. Let us stand against white monopoly capital in all facets of life and, argue it in the media, argue it in the courtrooms. It is when we're divided, I think, that this monster continues to exist. And I hasten to say this monster also gets into political parties. It manufactures for people who are starting and who are vociferous. And then they buy you, and then there's horse trading, and you expect this man to be, a liberal, and the next day he doesn't speak for the masses. I think South Africans must realize that there is a monster here. It's called white monopoly capital, and they must refuse to be silent and protect those who are adventing for economic freedom.
Yeah, and find a lasting solution to benefit all of us. So thanks for that. France in Pretoria, good evening to you. And Ramosela, we come to you in Mpumalanga. Hi, France.
Hello, Sandy.
How are you?
Very well. Firstly, let me just say you look beautiful tonight.
Oh, wow. Thank you, France. That was unexpected.
Thank you. We've got, this is a very important debate, and it's a very important matter that is discussed here. And as a country, we should continue with this discussion. But a discussion like this, we need to base it on, or we can't communicate facts that is false information.
Like what?
Only yesterday, the the JSE announced the figures for who really possess and owns the listed shares on the JSE. And it's available on the web. MoneyWeb and other websites has published it. And as one could have expected, the true figures of black ownership of JSE listed shares is currently more than 23%. So the communication that is consistently and repeatedly mentioned by in the national media of 3% is simply not correct.
All right, Franz, I'm sorry to cut your call, but we'll have Andile explain the interpretation of ownership, because some of it came as the advent of Black Economic Empowerment Act, where you buy into a company as opposed to growing an existing one, or rather starting one from scratch. But we'll have Andile respond. Ramosela in Mpumalanga, good evening to you and welcome.
Good evening, Cindy. Let me also start by saying you're looking very beautiful.
Oh, wow. You're going to start trending. Thanks, Ramosela. Good evening.
Thank you. On Mr. Sfiso's side, sir, don't be emotional. Calm down. We appreciate the solid facts that you have given, but I think you're becoming emotional. I've got two questions which I wanted to raise concerning the tripartite alliances of the ANC and the media. I can see your facts are very solid, and it's very good things that you're giving back to, information that you're giving back to the society right now. But very few people have got access to ANN7. I see here in Secunda, even some of them are brainwashed that nobody wants to watch at ANN7, because when you look at the SABC3, more especially SABC3 News at 6 o'clock, where you see that Francis Hope and Peter Ndoro, mostly they are campaigning for the DA strictly there. There's no good news that we can get. So only people who've got DSTVs can watch ANN7, and it's very hard to get access. Is there no way where you can bring an open channel which might be on SABC or such channels like ETV?
Yeah, Ramosela, thank you so much. So we are on all Androids. But I hear you that it needs to be on a free-to-air platform. Really appreciate it. Sibani, good evening to you. You are last caller on this debate. What's your comment or question?
What I would like to bring to the attention of black people is that we as black people were sold out by the giants of our struggle. The people who went after the apartheid era and got shares from these big companies. And the mandate that they had was to ensure that they control black people. They keep them away. They have all the money. They are just black in color. But actually, their bank accounts are white.
All right, Sibani, thanks so much. Thanks for that. I'm sorry, we are out of time. Andile, just quickly on the JSE black ownership question from France, if you can tackle that, and so we can go back to the fact that we still hugely an unequal society, the second unequal in the world at that.
Yeah, the JSE always try to hide the fact that we are only 3% black ownership. In fact, part of their calculation, they bring pensions. Anyone who's got a pension, they calculate that black people, because you have some pension, therefore somehow you are an owner in the JSE. This is nonsense. This is the wrong way to calculate, and we must reject that. We know that it is white companies. Look at the top 40 companies. They remain absolutely white. Now, the key thing, I think, Cindy, is we must destroy white monopoly capital if we want to grow the economy and want to have more equitable redistribution of wealth. And there are three things that we must do in this regard. We have to support President Zuma's call for land expropriation without compensation. We have to support and defend the mining charter. It's absolutely important because it breaks monopoly in the area of the mining sector. Thirdly, we have to implore the new Minister of Finance to license black banks and to bring into the stream state banks. If we don't do this, we can talk until tomorrow. Nothing is going to happen. We must break the monopoly. White people have the monopoly over these strategic sectors. That is why racism continues, white arrogance continues, because black people are excluded.
Mr. Mqutama, we're going to have to leave it there. That's Andile Mqutama, President of Black First Land First. Mr. Afrusa, the last words, very briefly, please. We're out of time.
There is a very strong divide in this country. This is the economy is divided into two, the white economy and the black economy. And the black economy, so to speak, joined BRICS, and that was the biggest mistake for them. Because now the economy is owned by whites completely. And they call the shots as far as the economy, whether it's breweries or banks, whether it's whatever part of the economy, the media. And the new public protector went for the heart of capital. And the hostile corporate mainstream media cartels were unleashed against her, and they will do anything and everything to sink her and to discredit her and undermine her. And finally, I would like to say, which is a very important thing in this country, particularly, it is very clear that apartheid cannot be divorced from colonialism or from UDI. It's all the same. It's cut from the same cloth, and that needs to be addressed. And as long as this, therefore, I believe, for example, all these court cases and all that, they mean nothing, because they've never brought in a conclusion that this will never happen again. It is there. Imagine in Germany today, you would have Adolf Hitler's family and offspring to rule the shots. Not possible. But here it is possible in this country. So we've got double standards.
Yeah, I'm sure the reparation tax issue would also come to light. I wish we had more time, but I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for your insight. Andile Mqutama is the president of Black First Land First Movement, and Udo Vruze is an independent political analyst and columnist. Siso Mahlangu, resident political analyst, and you at home, our most valued panelists. Thanks indeed for calling in. We'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.